Hey everyone, I'm Ermysenigma, welcome back to my channel and welcome to Monster Analysis. Up for analysis today is Gregorz of Lyria. Gregorz has just completed his training as a witcher and he can't wait to prove his skills and start making money by saving villages from the claws of some dangerous monsters. Being a monster himself, no one's better for the job. And as of the time recording this video, there are a total of 28 Earth Legendary monsters, so I'm going to be comparing Gregorz to the remaining monsters. Starting off with power, Gregorz boasts a power of 3,498, which puts him in 7th place along with monsters like Oros and Trilops. And yes, although 7th place may not seem that high, trust me when I say that 3,498, anything close to 3,500 and above, that is a really great power. As for his life of 29,858, this actually puts him in 21st place tied with Killer Raptor. And the only reason this puts him in a low place is because we're comparing him to Earth monsters who tend to be extremely tanky. So unfortunately, 21st place is the best he can do. And as for his speed of 3,454, this puts him in 5th place along with General Tomb's pets. So oddly enough, this big monster is pretty darn fast. And overall, I'd have to say this monster stats are pretty darn good. He has a high speed, he has a high power, his life is also pretty high, it's just not high compared to Earth monsters, but 29,000, almost 30,000, that is definitely a good life to have. And as for his trait, he's immune to possession, which certainly won't help him out against his own element. Earth monsters, they tend to utilize stun, some utilize mega stun, Baba Yaga does utilize possession, but if you were to put this monster on defense to counter Baba Yaga, then the enemy can just bring an Earth monster to stun you. So it's not that helpful against Earth monsters, but against magic monsters, this is an amazing trait. If it's ever an Earth magic war, you definitely want to put this monster on defense, because even though you'll still be denied by an enemy Earth deny monster, at least you won't be possessed and attack your own teammates. And Gregorz can obviously be used to counter dark monsters who also have possession skills. And being an Earth monster with immunity to possession is kind of unique, because currently only himself, Baba Yaga, and Pigridu have immunity to possession and are Earth monsters. And so with that out of the way, let's move on to his skills. His ultimate attack, Ignite. Deals heavy special damage to all enemies, may stun and burn all enemies. Wow, here we have a special based attack that deals 60 damage to all of the enemy monsters, and not only that, it also stuns the enemy monsters and it burns the enemy monsters. This pretty much means that Gregorz, even though he's really powerful, you're going to give him some strength runes, he's going to be an attacker. Even if he uses his ultimate attack against the enemy monsters, even if he doesn't kill them, all he needs to do is take away an initial 70% of their damage. If you can do that, the burning will kill them, because burning takes away 15% of their life for 3 turns. So the first turn they're going to be burned and stunned, which means they're not going to be able to attack you, which means if you just recharge and it's their turn again, when the burning kicks in, that's another 15% of their life. That's 30% of their life and you didn't have to do anything other than apply your ultimate attack. This is of course assuming the monster is immune to stun. If the monster is immune to stun, then you would have to take away 85% of their life, but if they're not immune to stun, you only need to take away 70% of their life with the initial 60 damage attack, which I imagine is extremely easy to do with this monster. As far as ultimate attacks go for an attacker, this is really good. In skills group 1, the only skill I want to briefly talk about is Modified Quen. Deals moderate special damage, heals by 30%, requires cooldown. This skill is a special based attack that deals an initial 30 damage, it costs 26 stamina and has a 2-turn cooldown. The only reason I'm mentioning this skill is because this is your only healing skill that recovers 30% of your life. I don't really know if it's worth running or not because it only deals 30 damage and this is an attacker, so you really want to deal as much damage as possible. But for those of you that are kind of worried about his health, kind of worried about him being taken out, I'd say run this skill. I don't know if it's worth taking out some of the other skills from skills group 2 and 3, but I don't know, it's at the end of the day, it's up to the player's individual choice. And so moving on to skills group 2, we have Earth Collapse. Deals heavy earth damage, may apply quicksand, requires cooldown. That's very interesting. We have another monster besides Tessidae that can apply quicksand. Quicksand, for those of you that don't know, takes away 15% of their health for the following 4 turns for a grand total of 60%. And so anyways, this is an earth-based attack that deals an initial 50 damage, costs 28 stamina, and it only has a 1-turn cooldown. And the really cool thing about quicksand is that it's essentially like burning, except no monster in the game is immune to quicksand, so it's a really useful DOT effect. But I actually won't be recommending this skill because he has a better version of it in skills group 3. Next up is Cleaning Potion. Deals heavy earth damage, removes all negative status effects from itself, gives stun immunity to itself, requires cooldown. And so Cleaning Potion is an earth based attack that deals an initial 55 damage, it costs 31 stamina, and it has a 1-turn cooldown. And so the cool thing about this skill is that 1, you're going to give yourself stun immunity, which in this case will also be working against mega stun. We're going to have to wait and see if that's actually the case, but according to how the text looks, it should give you immunity to both stun and mega stun. But not only that, you get to remove any debuffs, which means whether you're burned, blind, bleeding, poison, daze, any sort of negative effect, any sort of DOT, that's completely gone. Considering this monster is already immune to possession, which counters a lot of elements, and he can give himself immunity to stun, which counters his own elements, it's definitely worth running. And not to mention that this is also going to be a really powerful skill to use against thunder monsters and knock them out in one hit. Next up we have Bear Skull, deals moderate special damage, gains damage boost, requires cooldown. Here we have a special based attack that deals 45 damage to a single enemy monster, it costs 28 stamina, and it has a 3-turn cooldown. And this skill will give your monster a damage boost, which increases your damage output by 50%. And so for this skill, it's ultimately going to be up to you whether or not you want to run it. It's not necessarily a bad skill, but my personal preference, I'm not a fan of skill that does a little damage boost and then use AoE on the next turn. If this skill would have been double damage, I would have been a bigger fan of it, but the fact that it deals 45 damage and only gives you a little 50% damage boost, I'm not a fan of it. And so moving on to skills group 3, we have Groundbreaker. Deals moderate earth damage to all enemies, may apply quicksand to all enemies, requires cooldown. And so here we have an earth based AoE that deals 45 damage to all of the enemy monsters. That's pretty darn powerful already. It costs 37 stamina, it has a 3-turn cooldown, and it applies quicksand. And what more can I say other than, wow, a 45 damage AoE that applies quicksand, which is going to be taking 15% of the enemy's health for the next 4 turns, that is crazy good. And I'm going to move down to Bear Rage, deals moderate special damage to all enemies, may make all targets bleed, requires cooldown. And here we have a special based attack that deals 40 damage to all of the enemy monsters, it costs 37 stamina, it has a 2-turn cooldown, and it gives bleeding. And bleeding, for those of you that don't know, is yet another DOT that no monster is immune to, and it basically does 2 things. It reduces the enemy's damage output by 20% for the next 3 turns, and it also reduces the enemy's health by 10% for the following 3 turns. So in the course of those 3 turns, they're going to lose a grand total of 30% of their HP, and their damage output is reduced by a 5th, which reduces the likelihood of them taking out your monsters. And so together, both of these AoEs, Groundbreaker and Bear Rage, they are really darn powerful. Together they can essentially be seen as a 95 damage AoE that applies bleeding and quicksand, both DOTs which no monster is immune to. And currently for earth monsters, besides using Mega Stun, using DOTs are one of the best ways to take down Oros. So I'm personally going to recommend that you run both of the AoEs. And as for the last skill, and in my opinion the mother of all skills, Silver Sword. Deals massive special damage, may apply bleeding and quicksand to target, requires cooldown. So here we have an extremely powerful attack. It's a special based attack that deals 70 damage to a single enemy monster. It costs 28 stamina, which is pretty low, and it has a 1-turn cooldown, which is also pretty low, especially considering that it applies bleeding and quicksand. Together, both of these negative effects are going to take away 25% of the enemy's health. That's 1/4 of their life. Which means if Gregorz just takes away 75% of the enemy's HP with that initial attack from Silver Sword, that initial 70 damage, that's going to be enough to knock out the enemy monster, thanks to bleeding and quicksand, and this also paves the way to very strategic gameplay. Because for those of you that don't know, when a monster dies from a DLT effect, when they die from something like burning, bleeding, poison, or quicksand, what essentially happens is that the next monster in the turn order, their turn is going to be skipped and the following monster is going to go. So just to give you guys an idea of how that would work, let's say it's a light and earth war. Let's say you have Demise without speed runes, you have your Gregorz with 2 strength runes and a team speed rune, and then you have your third monster. Let's say it's a rarity monster for my example, and let's say the enemy has an all-speed General Ingvar on defense as well as an all-speed Bronzes on defense. Well, because of the way the runes are set up, it's going to be your Demise going first, followed by the enemy Bronzes, followed by General Ingvar because Bronzes has a faster base speed than Ingvar, followed by Gregorz. And once again for the third monsters, let's just assume it's a rarity monster, let's say it's a common. And so the whole point of the game is to try to keep your common alive because you want to maximize how many coins you get in Team Wars. And so of course you could have brought someone like General Tomb and try to AoE stun, but the problem with that is that when you're trying to AoE stun a general monster who is tough, who has a 35% chance to not get hit by any effect, that isn't really the most effective way of going about it. So instead you decide to bring Demise, and Demise is going to do Strength from Beyond on Gregorz, which means then Gregorz is free to use Silver Sword against the enemy Bronzes. Now here's where you gotta kind of calculate the runes and everything and the damage output, because what you essentially want to do is to not knock out Bronzes in one hit. No, you want him to die because of bleeding and quicksand, so you'd actually want to give him lower level strength runes. Heck, maybe you just give him 1 strength rune and 2 team speed runes or something like that. You want him to be 4th in the turn order, and you want him to knock out enough HP on Bronzes so that bleeding and quicksand will kill him, because when that happens, General Ingvar's turn is going to be skipped and it's going to go to Gregorz, and then Gregorz is free to attack General Ingvar, and then on the following turn it's Demise's turn again, and so that's essentially the best way to secure 3 coins, which is actually what makes Gregorz so good. This monster can be used to one-hit the enemy monster, or he can be used to strategically deal enough damage against the enemy monster that they die because of a DOT, which causes the turn of the following monster to be skipped entirely. And so my recommended skill set for Gregorz of Lyria is Silver Sword, Bear Rage, Groundbreaker, and Cleaning Potion. And for those of you that want to utilize the combo of running Bear Skull, getting that damage boost, and then using one of your DLTs, feel free to do that. And for those of you that want to have some sort of life recovery skill on your monster, there's always Modified Quinn, although it is a really weak attack. And as for runes for this monster, I would recommend the typical attacker rune setup, 2 strength runes and a speed rune or a team speed rune depending on your situation. And then depending on the kind of war it is, depending on the kind of runes you have, you may want to play around with the runes just to utilize the whole skipping the churn order with Silver Sword. And with that last little bit of information, that is going to be it for my analysis of Gregorz of Lyria, who in my opinion is one amazing earth monster, one amazing earth attacker. And now this is a part of the video where I want to hear from all of you guys. What do you guys think about this monster? How do you think he compares to other earth monsters? Where would you guys actually rank Gregorz compared to other earth attackers? Is he as good as them? Is he better than them? Is he not as good as them? Please let me know in the comments below. Best of luck to everyone on their Monster Legends adventure, and like always, remember to dream big and pursue your passions.